Michigan here's a winery in Michigan that got a $104,088 REAP grant for large solar array, and it replaced 40% of their energy usage. Here's another example of a solar array on a on-farm solar, and so they're 28 kW solar, and they're going to total project cost of almost $80,000 and pay back in 9 years. So here's another on-farm solar. I'm not going to try to read all of them to you. Here's another example of an energy efficiency improvement here in a maple syrup operation. So 50% reduction in energy costs. So I would recommend anybody considering any of these things, just do your research and look at what your return on investment is going to be, because that's ultimately what makes it make sense or not, you know, in terms of a good project. Here's another, let's see, that's a continuation of the maple syrup operation. So here's I don't know how well you guys can see this, but here's an example, or here's an energy investment map that shows you kind of some of the projects that we've seen across the state. So we've actually had in this region of Tennessee a good bit of biomass and a good bit of energy efficiency and solar as well. Solar predominantly in Tennessee has always been our biggest, and here in recent years, energy efficiency has started to see an uptick. So as far as application deadlines, we have an open application period. You can submit any time. There are application deadlines. So if your submission comes after the deadline, it would have to continue the next cycle. So October 31st is the first deadline of the fiscal year. And then we have an EA RETA program, which is not going to apply to most, I wouldn't think to any of you, but the EA RETA is designed for nonprofits, public bodies, schools and stuff to apply to get money to actually fund energy audits or renewable energy assistance for people like you that are interested in moving forward and doing something of this nature. And March 31st is the deadline for projects of 20,000 or less, and the unrestricted projects of greater than 20,000, which that's what's coming up here soon for us. And the guaranteed loans are on a continuous application cycle. So how do you apply? So basically, this right here, this link, you can go to our website, and this link will take you to all the application forms, and there's some instructions on how to complete those. They're definitely something that someone can do on your own. But with that being said, there is some expertise that's going to be required. So, you know, I would recommend, you know, you would have to have someone obviously qualified to do your installation, and you're going to need someone qualified to complete your technical report to submit it with your application. So keep that in mind. There are a number of different companies out there that are willing to work on projects for you, and grant writers as well. So we do not recommend anyone. That's something we don't do, but there are plenty out there that are capable of helping you with the application process. And any questions you have that our staff within rural development, we're more than happy to help as well. So, and this is the specific link that's on our webpage that'll take you to that. And I will, Sridhar, you will share our presentation afterwards, correct? Okay, good. Okay, so that way nobody's having to try to write this down. So you'll have it made available to you. So here's the contact map for the state of Tennessee. So we're broken down into area offices, and I'm in the state office, and our business program director, Joel Howard's with me as well. Starting in West, Tyler Hayes is in our Union City office, and Roe Hughes is in our Jackson office, and we still got Roe as the contact on Lawrenceburg, but actually Beverly Buckingham, who's in our Nashville office, is now covering the Lawrenceburg area. Josh Wilkerson covers the Cookeville area. Chris Battle covers the Chattanooga area, and we currently do not have anyone in the Knoxville-Greenville area. And Marisol Torres is our area director, and we have her down as the contact. Any questions anyone has, obviously you can reach out to the field staff, or you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'll work with the field staff to get your questions answered. And I guess we're down to questions, but before we do, I wanted to take a minute. I know there's several of our staff that are actually on the call. Why don't we start in east? Chris, I think you'd be the furthest one east. Would you like to pop on the camera and introduce yourself?
Yes, let me get it to work. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Hello, I'm Chris Battle. Just like Chuck said, I'm the area specialist in the Chattanooga area office. So if you got a snapshot of those counties that I cover, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information was also on that slide as well. So I look forward to working with anybody who has a project within my service area.
Thanks, Chris. Josh, are you on?
Thank you, Chuck. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josh Wilkerson. I'm out of our Cookeville office. I'll be covering any of the 14 Upper Cumberland counties. I look forward to working with any of you that have projects there. Thank you.
Beverly, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Beverly McCadden, and I am covering the Nashville area and the Lawrenceburg area. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me with any questions, concerns that you may have. Thank you.
I assume it's my turn, everybody. My name is Roe Hughes. I'm the area specialist with rural development down in Southwest Tennessee, covering the 12 counties in that region. Like everybody else has said, you've got our contact information in the counties that we serve. If you have a project or a need, feel free to reach out at any time. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Roe.
Hey guys, last but not least, Tyler Hayes. I'm in the Union City office. I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said, but I would like to thank the guys at UT, David Hughes and Sridhar and Hal Pepper and all those guys that put this together and help us to outreach this program. It's a great program that when put in the right situation can be very beneficial. So as everybody said, if you have questions or potential projects, just reach out to us and we'll get you in touch with the right person. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. So has anyone got any questions for me that we can answer about the program or anything of that nature? Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions. Who do we have next on the agenda? David, is that you?
Yes, it's me, Chuck.
Okay.
So any questions for Chuck or anybody else with USDA Rural Development? If not, we'll go ahead and
I think there might have been a question in the chat, Chuck.
in the chat. Okay, thank you. How long do you have to be farming? It's the question.
It's really not a matter of how long you've been farming. I mean, as long as you've been farming for a year, you get points for being what we would consider to be an existing business. However, the key about whether or not you're a farmer is really about what basically what your income is. You know, 51% of your gross income has to be from farming in order to be considered an ag producer. Doesn't mean you can't apply as a rural small business though. So there's technically not a time limit on how long you've been farming. The big key would be what you're planning to do in relation to a project and how that would be impacted on the farm. You know, this program is for non-residential uses, so you would have to be, if you were going to do something like solar, you would have to be replacing, you know, power that you already have existing on the farm, you know, doing something behind the meter.
I'll add a little bit to that. It does say that your eligibility, if you're an agricultural producer, is based on 3 years of your federal tax return. So your Schedule F returns. So if you, I don't know, maybe if you're between 1 and 3 years, it's kind of a gray area.
Yeah, you only supply what you have. If you don't have 3 years, you would get what you have. It doesn't keep you from being eligible. It's just that's just used to determine an average. The 3 years is. Let's see. Looks like we have another question from Tom with TVA. Let's see. Do we have a program to support state schools? REAP does not apply. Unfortunately, we do not have a specific program within REAP to support state schools. there might be a possibility in some cases that our community facilities program, which is a program for nonprofits, public bodies, that they could potentially apply through that to possibly get funding for solar. It would more than likely be a loan. There's very little grant money available in that program, and it's pretty competitive. It's held out for the most needy things. So typically that probably wouldn't apply, but that would probably be an option, Tom.
If I may add, the state has some money for energy efficiency and renewable energy for, and I'll be covering that in my presentation. So,
yeah. Any more questions? Those are very good questions. Thank you, Hal, for pointing that out. If not, I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay, so can we see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's some redundancy built in here, but you know, when you teach or present stuff, they always say redundancy is good, that people have to hear things 3 times before they really remember them. For me, I'm not even sure that works, but anyway, I'll cover a fair amount of what Chuck has covered, and then I'll go into a little bit more of the details in terms of scoring and whatnot and filling out your application. So this is really helping you prepare your REAP proposal. And there is a form that you can't, if you decided to do this yourself, there is a form that is as part of that USDA rural development package, which is on that link that Chuck talked about. There's a toolkit that you can use to develop your presentation. We're not going to go through this. Actually, for value to producer grants, I do go through it. We're not going to go through that, but we'll have elements of that. And we'll talk about the scoring that will be part of that. It's a good thing for you, even if you have somebody else so supply this or actually do your application for you, like a grant writer or an installer. It's still good for you to know what's going on and to expect the questions that they're going to have to answer you to fill out that form properly, because only you can provide that information that will go into the form itself. So hopefully this will provide you with a better understanding, however you decide to apply for this funding. We hope a lot of y'all do. So, you know, you have renewable energy systems, and they seek to promote renewable energy development for agricultural rules and rural small businesses, like Chuck pointed out, providing grants and guaranteed loans across 8 different categories of renewable energy production. And Chuck did a really good job of covering those. I don't have all of them listed. Some of them, energy efficiency, of course, seeks to improve energy efficiency, you know, using those same tools, the grants and the low programs. And of course, we're going to center on the grants in this presentation. But, you know, examples of biomass, for example, biodiesel or bio aviation fuel. I'm on a bio aviation fuel project, for example, ethanol, anaerobic digesters. I guess we've got one of those in the state now, and solid fuels. Geothermal for electric generation or direct use, small hydropower projects. They'd have to be small, even hydrogen, and small and large wind generation, small and large solar. And like Chuck pointed out, solar has been very popular in Tennessee. The energy efficiency funds may be used for the purchase, installation, and construction of energy efficiency improvements, like improving HVAC systems, installation, lighting, cooling and refrigerated units, you know, getting more efficient doors and windows in place, even pumps for irrigation, like a solar-driven pump or electric pump, switching from diesel to electric irrigation motor. And replacing just energy inefficient equipment that's eligible. As Chuck pointed out, vehicles aren't eligible. So what types of vehicles are eligible? Farmers anywhere. So you can be farming in downtown Nashville or Knoxville or Memphis in a very urban area. But if you get at least 51% of your net farm income from farming, you're eligible, or small rural businesses. Okay. And so agricultural producers are eligible regardless of location. And they can use that to install energy efficient equipment and systems for ag production and processing. So it really needs to be part of your farming operation, of course, or your value added, I would think, operation that would be on farm. But the majority, like we said, of your gross income must come from farming. And that determination is based on 3 years of your federal tax return. And so it would be your Schedule F return that you filed as a farmer. Okay, rural businesses, these are in rural areas, and Chuck's defined that. And you know, the project must be located in the rural area. The headquarters can be urban though. So if you're a company and your headquarters, say in downtown Nashville, do you have a project in a rural area, that project is eligible. And you can use the link provided below that Chuck showed you to check your eligibility. And if you do go to that, you'll get a menu, and you just check on the REAP program menu, and you get something like this. And this is a screenshot, of course. And so you go in and you enter your address, like I've done here, and then hit the go button. And so I just made one up for Milan, Tennessee area, because I knew that was a rural area. And then it comes back, this address is located in an eligible area. So it's very easy to check eligibility in terms of a small rural business. This came up a little bit earlier, but you got to, with a few exceptions, you must be a business. Excuse me. So most nonprofits are not eligible. For example, associations like a soybean board are not eligible. Nonprofits that are eligible are cooperatives, electric utilities, or tribal corporations or other tribal business entities, Native American or Indians. They would be eligible. Now, what's small? You can't just be anybody, but you must meet a designation for small. And actually, the designation for small is actually a pretty high bar. So for example, we're going to have the people from Wampler's on here later. They're not, they employ a number of people, but they're still considered a small business under the standard because they're eligible for the program. So you check that based on your North American Industrial Classification System code, which codes you based on what you do in particular parts, sectors of the economy. And you can check that at this link here. Now, one thing you need to be aware of is that franchises are usually based on the numbers for parent companies. But if you are a franchise, like say a Pizza Hut in a rural area, and you would put in solar panels, you would want to check with Chuck and the people with USDA Rural Development first to see if you're eligible or not, because a franchise situation is a unique situation. So also you have a dollar determination as well that you can use, where your maximum tangible net worth is not more than $15 million, and your average net income after federal income taxes for the 2 full prior fiscal years before your data application is not more than $5 million. So what do we mean by this? Well, this is just, if you go to that link, you'll find this list of your Small Business Administration small examples based on employment. So for example, as you can see here, and there's your NACE, so North American Industry Classification Code, but you can look up just what kind of business you are. And you can see if you're a dog and cat food manufacturer, if you employ less than 1,000 people, you're eligible. Or if you're a flour mill, same number. If you're doing malt manufacturing, it's 500 people. So if you employ less than 500, you're eligible. So really under this level, employee level, a heck of a lot of rural businesses are going to be eligible. I mean, many more will be eligible than not eligible. Standard size and based on gross revenue. Some businesses, they use gross revenue. For example, if you're a hardware store, if your gross revenue, the money you're bringing in, your gross, not your net income, not your profit, but your revenue bringing in, your total revenue. If it's under 8 million, you're eligible. A nursery and garden center, if you're under 12 million, you're eligible, and so on and so forth. So once again, there, it's a pretty high bar, and a lot more rural businesses would be eligible than not eligible under these criteria. Okay, what are the requirements of the program? And Chuck did a good job of covering this, but we'll go over this as well. Applicants must provide at least 70%, 5% of the project costs if you're applying for a grant only, and 25% if you're applying for the loan. You must have technical merit and utilize commercially available technology. So you can't come up with something that's extremely experimental. That will not pass. But if it's a commercially available established technology, then it can be considered. And for energy efficiency projects that require an energy audit, and in Tennessee, those are generally done by the Tennessee Valley Authority folks. Okay, Chuck went through this as well, but we will quickly. So if you have total eligible project cost of 10,000, then you reach that 2,500 minimum. If you went for a $500,000 grant, this is for a renewable energy system. So this is something like a biodigester or new solar panels. You could ask for up to 500,000 maximum, but then your total project cost would have to be at least $2 million to stay under that 25% limit. Net energy efficiency, it's a little lower. It's a 6,000 minimum and a 1 million maximum. And so of course that leads to a minimum ask of $1,500 and a maximum ask of $250,000. So this is that 25% cost share. And this is a reimbursable program. So you incur the cost. If you got the grant, you would incur the cost, and then you send those eligible costs to USDA Rural Development to be reimbursed. Okay, you must demonstrate an effective project for either program, that it will be operated perform over its useful life in a reliable, safe, and cost-effective manner. And so you got to address project design, installation, operation, and maintenance. And you can submit separate EEI and REI in a given federal years, but you can only do one type of request for each project in a given federal fiscal year. So if you submitted an energy efficiency request 10 months ago, you can't do one now, but you could do a renewable energy installation request, okay? Because those are considered separate there. So I hope that makes sense to people. You have to talk about the proposed scope of work. It's a brief summary, including a project title describing the proposed projects. You have to talk about your goals of the project and your geographical scope or service area of your project, and the method and rationale, the reasons you use to select that service area. So if it's for yourself, you would just say, we're putting in solar panels and it's providing X amount of energy for our business. And so that's who we're serving. That's our geographical area. This is our address. This is how we're doing it. And, of course, we're doing that obviously to save ourselves money and, and to provide environmental and other benefits. It's supplying others, identification of the specific need for the survey area and the target audience to be serviced. So you need to specifically identify who's going to be getting your energy, who you think is going to get that energy product you'd be selling to. So you need to come up with a number of producers or rural small businesses that would be served, including names and project and contact information if available. as well as the method and rationale used to select those agricultural producers and rural small businesses. And you could say, well, they're within a geographical area, and so we could get them the available power, for example. Okay, timeline and marketing strategy for RES, describing the proposed tasks to be accomplished and the schedule for implementing each task, including whether your own staff, consultants, or contractors would be used to provide each task. And once again, if supplying others, marketing strategy to include a discussion of how the applicant will be marketed and providing each activities to those service area to ensure that they're being served. So you need to say, for example, yes, we've contacted and made offers to sell power to these other rural businesses in our area, and this is how we're going to get the power to them or to agricultural producers. So you need to talk about your plan for marketing that energy power or supply if you are going to be selling to others. And then the timeline too, for kind of in-kind match, you could start thinking about who would provide, who's doing what. And if you have people on your own staff, you could put their time in as a possible match. Your project and private service providers experience in completing similar activities, including similar projects performed, and number of years perform a similar service, so indicate relevant experience. And if you've had an energy audit awarded in the last 5 years, please describe achievement of the award, such as energy sold or saved. Okay, matching funds, and we'll talk about matching in a few minutes in terms of scoring, but you need to identify the amount of matching funds and other funds that sources the applicant is proposing to use for the project. So money you're actually putting in yourself is a cost, or whether it's a match. And then if it's a matching fund, you have to have a written commitment. And at the time the application is submitted, and the same for other funds. So if it's your funds, you must show that with the bank statement. And if a third party is providing some sort of financial assistance to the project, like putting in funds or putting their time in as a match, they must submit a commitment letter signed by an official of that third party. And it must be specific to the project and identify the dollar amount to be provided. And you would need a loan if a loan's involved, you need a letter from your lenders with all of the specifics. Any prior REACH projects, you must have made satisfactory project toward completion of any previously funded projects before being considered for this round of funding. And if you got one that's in project in process now, at least 50% of that award, the money that you're getting from USDA Rural Development, in other words, that cost share that you've been reimbursed for, must be at least 50% by January 31st, 2022. And I guess those dates still hold. So if you have a project that's in play now and you've only had 30% of your costs reimbursed by USDA, you would not be eligible for this round under this rule. USDA doesn't maintain a list of qualified energy auditors, but regulations do define credentials. And a good idea is to contact your local power company to have them set up TVA to do the audit. And then these are the various people that would qualify, if you're certified by the Association of Energy Engineers, licensed professional engineer in the state, who's had experience and so on and so forth. I won't run through all of those, but those are the people that, or the categories of qualifications for people that could do an audit. But it's probably best to just go through TVA. Okay, total project costs, use total project costs in the form. And that's all costs associated with the completed project, including ineligible costs and regarding the source of the funds. Okay, so maybe this make a little more sense with an example. Like wind turbines, an example must include all the costs associated with the completed wind turbine project, including the turbine, the tower, the foundation, and the electricity that goes to the wind turbine. For retrofitting an existing renewable energy system would include the costs associated with modifying and replacing existing components. For example, if the tower is already in place, but the turbines need to be replaced, then the total cost would be the replacement. Any costs associated with the replacing the turbines would consider the total project cost. So that'd be, of course, the cost of buying the new turbines, and then the cost of installing those new turbines, but the tower itself would not be part of that. Purchase and installation of new refurbished equipment, construction, retrofitting, replacement improvements. So the EEI identified in the application assessment or energy audit, fees for construction permits and licenses, or eligible professional services for qualified consultants, contractors, installers, and other people that you pay for services that are relevant. If you have to put in a separate meter because it's tied into some other operation and it's part of this, then that also would be eligible. But of course, you want to check all this with your USDA rural development people. An eligible cost, Chuck's gone over this, but we'll go over it a little bit again. Things like agricultural tillage equipment, used equipment, and vehicles aren't eligible. Residential projects aren't eligible. So we can't use the help this pay for this for putting solar panels on our homes for our home use. If we could, I would probably have already applied for it. Construction or equipment costs that would be required regardless of the installation of the project. So for example, say you have storage grain bins. Well, if you're going to put up storage grain bins just by themselves, that's not eligible. But say if you're connecting to a new dryer system or a dryer system, then the dryer system, the costs associated with that would be considered eligible, okay? But for example, if you're doing a solar panels, even though you're doing that operation on the roof of a building, you can't pay for any costs related to the roof of the building itself, because that's a cost you would incur regardless of whether you had a solar panels or not. But of course, the solar panels themselves would be eligible. If you're involved in gambling or illegal or other such activities, you're basically not eligible unless that's a very small part of your total revenue. Lease payments aren't. Anything with a conflict of interest, and you can read the rest of that. You also can't use it to pay off other federal debts or guaranteed loans, and you can't use it, like Chuck pointed out, to pay a grant writer. You must include all environmental review documents with supporting documentations. And you would want to first discuss this with the USDA field specialist, your regional offices that Chuck talked about. So contact them. And so they'll have a checklist document and work through that. And this is basically kind of a 5-page document, but it covers, you work through the process and anything that's environmental, like possible impacts on wetlands, historic site, endangered species, farmland, so on and so forth, including minority or low income populations. So that you have to go through and indicate whether there are any impacts there or not. This is just a picture of the first page of that. So you need a map, you need to describe describe the project description, the project size and site, and so on and so forth. And then you get into, are you having any impacts in particular areas? Award amount considerations in determining the amount of the grant to be awarded under either program or even sub-program. The agency will take into consideration the following 6 criteria: the type of renewable energy system to be purchased, the estimated quantity of energy to be generated by the RES, expected environmental benefits, for the RES, for the EEI or energy efficiency, the quantity of energy saved, expected to be derived from the activity as demonstrated by an energy audit, and the expected period of time for the energy savings generated by the activity in comparison to the cost of activity, and the expected energy efficiency, the RES itself as well. And we're going to go through some examples of this and hopefully make a little bit more sense when we do get into project scoring. So typically you have 90 points. It can be 100 points if there's kind of a special award, like if you're in a at-need category, like in a low income community or something like that. We really won't get into that. You can talk to USDA about that, but we'll go through the other 90 points. So if for existing businesses, you get 5 points. If you've been in operation for at least 1 full year. So that gets back to the question earlier, how long will I had to have been in operation? And it is 1 year, even though what it says about 3 years of tax returns. But the bad tax return is the best documentation, if not a historic or pro forma financial statement with projections. So if you'd been less than 3 years, you would have to turn in something with projections. Okay, so that's 5 points there that everybody should get. But now you get into more of the competitive part. And so you want to score high, because the higher you score, the more likely you are to get the funds. The first thing is, and we make a big point of this in the Value to Producer grant training as well, is make sure you're eligible, and USDA Rural Development can help you with that. Make sure what you turn in is an eligible project that they can support. You're an eligible business. And then after that, you try to get points, okay? So being eligible is the first cut, and then trying to score high is the second cut. So for E projects, it's a simple payback. Total project cost divided by dollar value of energy saved. And historic energy, what's energy saved? It's just historic energy consumption minus projected energy consumed. So it's just how much energy you can demonstrate that you're saving by putting in this efficiency. Okay, now this is an example of scoring, and this is actually a scoring sheet. So this would be for RES, I guess, an example. And there's I can send you the PowerPoint if you want to look at this biogas cancel presentation directly that I stole this from. But here, the managed energy proposed to be generated by the new energy system was 300,000 million British thermal units. And then based on a evaluation of $15 per million, you came up with a value of $4.5 million. Okay, so you've demonstrated that through the score sheet. Okay, looking at payback, you have total project cost, total eligible project cost, dollar value of energy sold. So that would be that same 4.5 million. income calculation. So how much income's being generated by this? Here it's energy sales, but you could put in energy savings, 4.5 million. Operate and maintenance due to this new project is 1 million. And so what's your kind of net return, or your return to what we call a fixed cost, or EBITDA, which is earnings before industry tax depreciation and amortization. So you take the operating costs from your gross sales annually, and you come up with a EBITDA of 3.5 million. And then, okay, so this is an example of a simple payback calculation for an anaerobic digester at total cost, total project cost of 2.5 million. How much was earned by that biogester was almost 610,000. Around 470,000 of that was from electrical sales, but also they sold compost directly from that. So it needed to be something that would be direct, of about 138,000. So that's how you get with the revenue of a little over 609,000. Total annual operating costs are $155,600. So you subtract that from your total revenue or earnings. And then this is your EBITDA, okay, which is the difference between the annual operating costs, which is going to be things like labor and electricity and supplies. And so your beta here is the difference between those two numbers, or a little over 453,000. And then your payback, your simple payback in years is just your total project cost of the 2.5 million divided by your EBITDA, that 453,600. It is equal to 5.5 years. So your project payback is 5.5 years. Simple project payback. Don't worry about anything in terms of compounding interest or anything like that. So for the RES, a simple payback point scoring, if it's less than 10 years, 15 points will be awarded. So this is part of those 90 points we talked about. So here, definitely 5.5. So we would get the full 15 points. If it's 10 to 15 years, but if it's over 10, but less than 15, you get 10 points. If it's 15, including 25 years, you get 5 points. If it's longer than 25, no points. For the EEI, that's simple payback scoring. If it's less than 4 years, 15 points will be awarded. So you would demonstrate the value of your savings in energy from, based on your energy audit. So this is our power consumption. This will be our power consumption, if we put in these new energy saving things like new doors and windows. And so the difference between that, and then you would value that based on your electricity costs, what you pay per unit, and do that same payback calculation. If so, that using those numbers. And so if it's less than 4 years, your payback calculation, you get 15 be awarded. If it's 4 years, but just under 8 years, 10 points awarded. If it's 8 years through 12 years, 5 points awarded. If it's more than 12 years, beyond 12 years or 13 more or years, no points are awarded. But you definitely would want to be in this lower category if all possible with the fast, rapid payback. For grant applications requiring less than 250 for RES or less than 125,000 for EEI, an additional 10 points may be awarded. So that, look at that when you're asking for the money and think about your trade-off in terms of points awarded in your scoring. Okay, commitments for funds for the total cost, for the total project cost. If you propose to match 50% more of the grant funds requested, 20 points will be awarded. And I think in general, most people are going to be putting, at least 50% in anyway, so they should get this. But this is your money and effort, documented effort toward the project that you need to demonstrate in your application process. So you could have put in, a certain amount of your time or your staff's time, but you'd have to you'd have to value that or document that value, that valuation. And then of course you can put in cash match as well, or money or a loan, as we said earlier, to meet that match requirement. So I would shoot for 50% of the more of the grants requested. A lot of grants are one-to-one match. 50% actually is a pretty low, is a lower standard. So that's, if you're asking for 100,000, you would want to match at least 50% of that, $50,000, to get this 20 points. And then you can read on down how the match, your scoring goes down the less and less match that you provide. Environmental score, maximum of 5 points. Benefits in 3 impacted areas, such as resource conservation, like water, soil, and forests, public health, drinking water and air quality, and the environment, like EPA rules regarding greenhouse gases, emissions, particulate matter. If you're positive in all 3 areas, 5 points awarded, 2 areas, 3 points, 1 area, 1 point. I would try to justify or document 5. So for example, if you're putting a solar panel, and you could argue that there's, less wood that's taken from the forest for burning, perhaps, public health, you're not reducing, power plants that affect air quality. They put particulates in the air. Same thing for the environmental or the EPA rules regarding greenhouse gases. And you could say, well, we're buying less off the grid, where coal is used to generate a fair amount of the power, and so we're replacing that with something that doesn't impact the environment in those ways. But you'd need to document all that. Experience of the organization conducting the energy audit for the EEI or the RES project. So a maximum of 25 points based on the experience of the organization. So if you're hiring somebody to do this, you'd want to tout their experience. If they got more than 10 years, 25 points. And, it goes down based on less years of experience that they have. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the, how would you apply for this portion of this? Hopefully, it's not too confusing. The next slide, I'm very much like switching gears here, is just a program we found out about, and with permission of the people that are operating that program, we'll put in that slide. We were going to have them present, but actually there's only projects that are eligible in the listed East Tennessee and Middle Tennessee counties that will show there. But if you want to know if this thing actually, these programs actually happen, this is, and I can, I'm not sure Chuck can, but I can talk about specific projects. Hal and I did Hal Pepper and I did a value-added producer grant training about a month or so ago in Kenton, Tennessee at White Squirrel Winery. And if you can see there in the background, there's a solar panel, and that was the Tennessee REAP Rural Development REAP project that helped White Squirrel Winery put in those solar panels. And of course, you can see their grapevines in front of it there. So that's an example of a success story that's really helped to facilitate a successful rural business in Tennessee. This is a program I was talking about, Appalachian Solar Finance Fund. This is a grant fund. And this organization, those are the eligible Tennessee counties. So we got roughly about 18 Tennessee counties that are eligible in Middle and East Tennessee. And I guess the rationale here was these were counties where coal used to be somewhat important. and that's why they were picked there. But this organization, the Solar Finance Fund, the Appalachian Solar Finance Fund organization, can make competitive grant awards and technical assistance contracts to public entities, nonprofit organizations, or local commercial businesses that serve as community anchor institutions. So here it looks, nonprofits are eligible. In fact, they seem to be preferred, and things like schools. We asked a question about schools earlier. Would be definitely in this public entities category. And so this is solar funding. So this would be for solar panels. So if you are interested, I would encourage you to reach out to Autumn Long, and there's her contact email right there. And she generated this slide, of course, and dig in further to see if you might be able to receive some of this grant funding. Well, with that, I'm done. Do we have any questions?
David, there was one question in the chat.
Okay, I'm trying to look.
That they're saying if other projects.
Quinn is, yeah, the client is large enough that they have their own attorney or grant. Can they write the grant? I don't think it matters who writes the grant. Yes. Can the EPC write the grant? Yes, they could write the grant. You don't have to have an outside vendor to write the grant. USDA Rural Development doesn't care who writes the grant as long as it's somebody that's competent. Of course, they want somebody that's competent to be writing that grant, but no, grant writing is not restricted to grant writers or installers at all.
David,
so
David, this is Tyler. Just to further answer one other question that was in the top, as far as a 3 megawatt type project, the maximum grant amount would be $500,000. So yes,
okay,
they could receive.
Right. Thank you, Tyler. Anything else? Well, hopefully you got a sense of what the program's about with this, and how you might go through the application process and score high enough to receive funding, and hopefully a number of y'all will go out and do that or encourage others to do it. With that, we're on a looking at the schedule. I think we have, is it a 5 or 10 minute break?
10-minute break, David.
10-minute break. And so if people can come back by 2:20 for Dr. Upendurm's or Schreeder's presentation regarding other resources, other sources of funding that you can tap in Tennessee besides rural development to facilitate renewable energy development and energy savings. So we'll see y'all back in a few minutes.
David, are you there still?
Yes.
Hey, I have a question. My name is Mike Zito. If whenever you were doing the requirements based on cost of the build out, and then for the point situation, were you basing the total cost of the build out? Did that include the tax credits or no?
That's a good question. Is anybody from rural development on that could answer that? Because I don't think I really can. My gut would say that you couldn't include, you'd have to deduct out tax credits, but I don't know that.
Right, because like if I'm looking at a project, say that it's $5 million,
right?
And the savings is going to be just say $300,000. Yeah, I mean, that's roughly like 15%. So,
Right.
yeah, the question, yeah, I mean, so that essentially it gets 0 points.
Right.
My question is, you put in the 26% tax credit, then you're getting some points. Because if you're getting 0 points, you can't get the whole 25%, I'm assuming.
Right.
Right. So if you want to try to max it out at 25%, are they basing the saving, the amount of electricity savings you're getting, is it going to be based on the total cost of the project without any of the tax credits?
Tax credits. It's a good question. Let me
Yeah, 'cause
see.
that's the difference between it being like 5 million versus 3.8.
Right. Tax credit.
Because we know the tax credits are definitely going to be there. I mean, the next question would be is if you get the
Okay.
tax credit.
I found something, and this is a document. I can send it to you. It says the RES project simple payback calculation does not include any one-time benefits such as, but not limited to, construction and investor-related benefits, nor credits which do not provide annual income to the project, such as tax credits. So no, you can't include tax credits.
Wow.
Yeah, that's, and I can, if you want to email me, I'll send you this document.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the deal, that's the deal. I mean, I could probably find the same info. I was
Right.
just wondering if.
Right.
Yeah, that's. No.
Yeah, and then this is Tyler again. Just kind of interject. I'm not sure that I followed your logic behind if you got 0 points for the payback portion that you wouldn't get the full 25%. That's not necessarily correct. The scoring just determines which applications get funded. So as Chuck kind of mentioned in his presentation earlier, for the last couple of years, we've had some money left over. So with that being said, if we have enough money in the state of Tennessee to fund all projects, scoring doesn't matter. If we don't have enough money to fund all projects in Tennessee, then that's where the highest funding applications are going to get, or highest scoring applications will be funded first. And then if we run out of money, there's a potential that some of the lower scoring applications are not funded.
So unlike value-added producer grants, Tennessee has a pot of money, and the decision is made based on Tennessee's pot of money.
I got you. And I guess a follow-up to that would be, is that pretty common between all states?
All states are different. So like North Carolina always uses all of their money. Tennessee generally use it, well, up until the last 2 or 3 years, we used all of our money. So it varies state to state based on state incentives, based on, aggressiveness of contractors in those fields. It varies across the landscape.
Okay.
I have a question. So that pot of money, so Tennessee does have like all the money that wasn't spent in the past 3 years, for example, since we didn't use all of it, is still able to be allocated anytime?
No, so what happens, the funding cycles are for a federal fiscal year. And so if, just say Tennessee has $200,000 left over, at the end of that funding cycle, that money is going to go back to Treasury and be reallocated to another state that has an excess amount of applications. So any prior year's worth of excess funding has been spent somewhere else.
That's why Chuck said he wants us to have enough applications where we not only spend our money, we'd be able to spend money that other states couldn't spend.
That's right.
Wow, interesting. Okay. And then, so, I mean, I guess you were saying that in 2021, there were only 19 projects.
Yes.
And is that like, what kind of projects were they? I'm just curious. Like, were they for energy efficiency, or were they?
Yeah, I wish Chuck were still on, because he's our energy coordinator and could speak on all of them, but I can give just kind of a brief overview. So, we had a few large scale solar projects, couple meg solar projects that, those are going to take up generally $500,000 each pop, which is less than 25% of total project cost, but that's the most they can get. Then we had a few smaller solar installs, $20,000 or less. And then the rest were energy efficiency. Anything from lighting and HVAC improvements to, small gyms or grocery stores to a gamut of things, energy efficient grain dryers for farmers. And then we did have, as Chuck mentioned, one renewable energy project for an anaerobic digester for a sausage plant. So that kind of gives you an idea. Again, there's probably some more that I don't know about, but that's kind of an overview.
But Tyler, didn't the fall off come in the sort of the energy efficiency area?
Well, David, historically, in my tenure, which is about 10 years, when solar was booming with the TVA incentives and the tax credit was a little bit higher, solar was kind of the overwhelming favorite type of application that we got.
Right.
And then as solar has kind of dwindled in the incentive area, EEI has picked up a little bit, but generally the cost associated with energy efficiency improvements is less than the cost of solar installations.
Right.
With exception to scale, but that's where we've kind of gotten off on our numbers there.
Yeah.
Is it I guess too nosy to wonder how much money was given back?
No, it's not too nosy, but I don't know the answer to that. That would be a Chuck question. I can while we're waiting on the group to start back, I'll send him a message and see if I can get that.
And Chuck's supposed to be back around 3. He had a national office, you must be at this meeting call. So, but he said he should be back around 3 or 3:30 at the latest.
I'm also I can just email as well.
Right.
And ask if I'm
He's told me, and I can't remember specifically, but it wasn't a huge amount. I mean, it wasn't like $1 million.
right.
But it was some, and we don't want to return any,
Yeah.
So, in fact, that us starting to do this training, and last year was the first one we did this particular one. That was one of the rationales, is that I guess they returned the USDA Rural Development, or Tennessee USDA Rural Development returned some funding a couple of years in a row. So that was one of the reasons they wanted to start doing this training.
Yeah, so I'll interject again real quick. This is Tyler. I just sent Chuck a message, and $109,000 is what Tennessee didn't spend last year. Of course, that money goes back to the national office, and then any projects unfunded in other states compete for that money. So I have no idea where it went, but that's how much we returned.
Thanks.
Welcome.
You're welcome.
Sridhar, are you ready?
Yeah, David. Yeah, let me share my screen real quick. And can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sridhar. I'm an assistant professor and a community economic development specialist. And here's an outline for the presentation today. We're going to talk about Tennessee energy, the consumption, the expenditures, energy economy in Tennessee, some rankings from the ACEEE, American Council for Energy Efficiency, and also talk about wind solar potential, energy use in agriculture, and some alternative energy uses and some funding opportunities. So here's a map of Tennessee energy resources that we have. We have about 28 hydroelectric power plants, 9 natural gas-fired power plants, 6 solar power, 5 coal-fired, 2 nuclear, 1 wind farm, 1 pump storage hydroelectric plant, and a biomass plant. In 2020, the amount of electricity generated by natural gas, which was about 20%, exceeded coal-fired generation, which was about 18%. And also Tennessee is the third largest hydroelectric power producer east of the Rocky Mountains. New York and Alabama being first and second. And then hydropower also contributes close to like 13% of power generation in Tennessee. All right, here's chart of what's going on in terms of energy consumption between 1960 and 2019. That's almost about 60 years worth of data. But as you can see, industrial sector was the biggest consumption until about 2008, 2010. But then, as you can see, transportation has taken up. That's probably the #1 consumption since then. In terms of what's going on in each sector, if you look at the commercial sector, it was under about 100,000 BTUs, billion BTUs, but then it's almost more than, it actually increased more than several fold, I would say like 4 to 5 times. But then if you look at the residential sector, it's almost doubled. And I would actually say it's more than doubled. And then in terms of transportation, you can see it's almost gone more than several folds. But while you're looking at this, industrial sector has gone up quite a bit, you know, the peak being in like early 90s, but then it went back down. Why do you all think the transportation sector took off in 2010? Can anybody chime in or put it in the chat box? What's going on in the transportation sector between 2010 and now, 2012 and now? Why is that why is the biggest energy consumption sector? Any guesses? Where electric vehicles? Okay, that's probably one, but anything else? Where are we buying our goods these days? Where do we shop? Do we actually go to brick and mortar stores, or do we buy a lot of things online? And when yes, exactly. And if we're buying things online, where do we spend all our money? There's a lot of transportation. You see Amazon trucks, a lot of things that are going everywhere else. But there's a lot of trucks that you see on the interstates, and that's where there's a lot of energy consumption going on. But I'll dig into the details a little more, but that's what's going on. That's the reason why you actually see more energy consumption from the transportation sector. So in terms of energy expenditures, we spend about over $26 billion annually on energy. And then in terms of energy consumed per capita, it's about 318 million BTUs. Those are the British thermal units, and per capita, annually we spend about $3,800. That's actually gone down a little bit the last couple of years. And also the average electric rate is about 11.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Tennessee is among the top, or the top 10 in terms of the lowest prices as far as electricity rates are concerned. And we're also the largest ethanol producing state in the southeast part of this country. Here's a breakdown of what's going on in terms of energy consumption. This is 2019 data. Like we talked about, petroleum is about 50%, then followed by like electricity, and then you got natural gas, renewable energy, and coal. In total, the consumption was about 1,486 trillion BTUs. But if you also look at the sectors, again, transportation sector about 44.9%. That's the reason why you're seeing a lot of trucks and stuff, and that's directly related to the petroleum usage. And then you have industrial consumption about 26%. That's almost a little over a quarter. And then residential and commercial following very closely, but at about 15% and 13.4%. So in terms of the energy economy, the advanced energy jobs they pay a wage of about $64,000. That's typically higher than the average wage, average median household income. And they contribute about $45.8 billion to the state's GDP. the gross domestic products. It's about 393,000. That's almost 40,000 jobs, and about 20,000 businesses work on those. And these are really fast-paced. They outgrow, and they're really taking off over time. In terms of they can be a targeted industry cluster as we speak, and then there's opportunity to increase employment and capital investments, especially in rural Tennessee. In terms of energy efficiency rankings, as you can see, Tennessee is ranked 29th. We're actually below average. California is leading state, but we're actually about at 29. On average, we spend about $19 million per year on energy efficiency program, but the U.S. average is about 64 million. So that's way below what any other state spends. But also, there's things going on. Since 2019, Tennessee has adopted the 2018 International Residential Codes, and they also adopted the International Energy Conservation Codes. We also had EV charging infrastructure going up, but then we do not have any. We did not adapt any upland standards beyond the federal federal requirements. So that's the reason why we're actually ranked lower. But there's always things going on, and TVS does a tremendous job with energy efficiency and other programs, but we're still lagging behind several other states. Here's a map of wind energy potential. This comes from NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. As you can see, the ones with higher potential are in the darker greens, along the Tennessee River Valley, and then some in eastern Tennessee and northeastern Tennessee. So there's potential, and then there's also some more potential in the middle, and then western Tennessee. So similar map for solar. Obviously, the southwestern United States has a high solar radiance. And then if you look at Tennessee, we do have a lot of potential in southwest, south central, and then some along the Tennessee River Valley. So what's going on in energy use in agriculture? So basically, the key consumption operations are tractor and field operations. Irrigation systems use a lot of energy, indoor, outdoor lighting. If you're working in the shop, you use a lot of energy, and then livestock building, grain drying, and livestock water systems use a lot of energy in agriculture. But there's things about within this graph actually talks about trends in consumption and production of energy. So there are opportunities where you can actually use things about renewable energy. You can use solar, wind, geothermal, anaerobic methane, and digesters. You can actually be using alternative sources and still be better off. So in terms of what exactly are we talking about, especially when you're using electricity, alternative sources could be like wind turbine, photovoltaic panel systems, and micro hydro system or anaerobic digesters, very similar to what David and Chuck had talked about. In terms of heating water, you could use a solar thermal system or a geothermal system, which are more efficient. And for heating air, you could use solar, geothermal, biomass, or passive solar design. And transportation fuels could be like biofuels or renewable electricity that's being generated. You could use hybrid vehicles or electric vehicles, like somebody suggested already. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the fund opportunities, a few that are available in the state of Tennessee. So Volkswagen Diesel Mitigation Trust. So it's mainly to prioritize school buses and new alternative fuel vehicles. This supports mainly medium to large trucks, and then the shuttle and transit buses. So there's over 310,000 available last year. And then the maximum vehicle fund requests are mainly to meet the NOx standards, the nitrous oxide standards, about 25%, 35% to meet the lower NOx standards, and 45% vehicles that have no tailpipe. So funding is also available to repower an older diesel vehicle, or you could even convert a diesel vehicle to an alternative fuel. And then it's also, there's funding available for installing truck stop electrification equipment. Excuse me. So in terms of other funding, there's something called Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Fund. What it entails is it's mainly to support communities with capacity building, to increase resilience and public safety. It's mainly to support large infrastructure projects and things that need critical services and facilities. So something like if you have a disaster and things like that. So it mainly pays for management costs, administrative costs associated with mitigating specific mitigation projects. In fiscal year 21, the BRIC funding was about 500 million, and each state or territory was allocated about $57.4 million. And then there's also a Tennessee set aside fund that's about $600,000. All right, so somebody had asked about energy efficiency grant and loans for schools. I think it was Tom. So but there is a low interest loan to fund energy efficiency projects in Tennessee public schools that are K-12. The eligibility requirement includes they should be a public school and they should be in a special school district. There's also technical assistance that's available to the schools, school districts, and any charter schools. So eligible projects include if you're upgrading lights, pumps and motors, if you're improving installation, any energy management system. It's also used, it could also be used to improve your water or wastewater treatment plants, any HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and then load shifting projects. In terms of interest rates, they're fixed. So loans up to 3 million, the interest rate is about 1.5% for the term of the loan. And then loans greater than 3 million, they're split into two. 1.5% for the term of the loan of 3 million, and then 2% for the remaining funds requested about 3 million. And then the tenure for the loans, they have to be repaid back in about 16 years. Okay, so here's the other state incentives for renewable energy efficiency. These are all available on a website called Desire, so database of state incentives for renewable efficiency. So there's money for solar easements, there's building energy codes, Energy Star procurement requirement for agency, and like I said, the Energy Efficiency School Initiative for grants and loans. There's also a pathway lending efficiency loan program. We do have someone talking about that right after my presentation on Tom's. There's green energy tax credits, sales tax credits for clean energy technology, and then green energy property tax assessment, and then supply chain franchise and excise tax credit. So all this, you can actually view these in our presentations. You can click on them and then see where they lead you. So several of these are grants or loan programs. There's some incentives, and there's also some tax credits that you can see. And also there's standards for buildings, and also this building energy codes that you all can look up as well. So here's my references. That is pretty much what I have, and I will entertain any questions. Okay, looks like somebody had a question. Let's see. Agriculture concerned industrial, where does that fit? I think, let me go back to the slides 1 second. In terms of, Mindy, can you ask the question again? I'm sorry. Is that related to this particular chart?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I think there's a small sliver of agriculture. I would probably put it maybe under industrial or commercial, but I'll have to double check that and get back to you. If it is transporting any products, like, you know, any harvested products to the silos or somewhere else or to the market, that would probably come under transportation. But I would probably put it maybe under commercial, not so much under industrial. David, do you have any comments on that?
Streeter, if I had to say, I'd say it's mainly under industrial.
Industrial, okay, yeah.
But that's a good question. Take a little more digging to know exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Absolutely.
interesting to think about, like, especially in context of what we're all here to learn more about.
Well,
Amazing.
there's a lot of agriculture does consume energy, and it does generate greenhouse gases, but there's a lot of misinformation out there about that, and there's a lot of uncertainty out there about that too, frankly.
Absolutely.
So
No, I agree. Go ahead, Mindy. Did you have a further comment?
No, I just appreciate you guys taking the time to try to answer it.
Absolutely. And then I think, like I said, I think there's other opportunities where you can switch to other things, it could be any of these where you're talking about crop production, livestock and all those. And within here, you can look at petroleum, natural gas, electricity as sources as well. But yeah, that's a good question. Well, I don't believe TDEC or the EIA classifies in this agricultural energy use, but I'll try to chase that and get back to you. Okay, looks like somebody had the comment. I think we're okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, I think we're on to the next speaker.
yes,
You're up next.
and Tom, you're a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen if you need to.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I will go ahead and let's see here. See if I can share this screen real quickly. Hopefully,
Yep.
you can see my screen here.
Yep.
Very good. So I don't know if anybody, I think this is going to be right in line with what everybody else has talked about. But if there are businesses on our call today that have carbon reduction goals, we often have conversations with some of our industries in the TVA service area about carbon reduction. And I'll tell you that TVA has worked in cooperation with a lot of folks on this call, a lot of businesses and a lot of our local power companies. We've spent over $1.4 billion in the last 2 years supporting about 4,200 solar installations of about 1,600 megawatts. And so our carbon content in our power has come down drastically and continues to come down. So if you have a carbon reduction goal, then you want to reach out to your local power company, because compared to 2005, the carbon in the power you're consuming today has 63% less carbon. And by 2030, we'll be at 70% reduced compared to 2005. And our goal is to be around 80% reduced by 2035 and hopefully net zero by 2050. We've retired or in the process of retiring over 8,000 megawatts of coal-fired generation, and over 60% of our power production is carbon-free. So we have a very, very a high amount of renewable generation in the Southeast. We're the highest renewable content in this area. So we're very proud to say that we're in a good spot as far as carbon goes. A lot of folks want to buy RECs, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but a REC is a renewable energy credit that you can buy from a solar power producer. And it's when you produce power from a renewable source, you not only get the power, but you get the renewable energy credit, which is 1 megawatt hour of energy. So just to kind of keep everybody on the same page. If you generate power and want TVA to buy that excess power, our dispersed power production is the longest standing offer that we have. It does require a 5-year agreement. The producer does retain all the RECs, all the renewable energy credits. There's no cap, but the cost is basically what you get paid is based on TVA's avoided cost of power. So it is not a large rate that you're going to get back. You're probably better off to size your renewable generation to match or be slightly under the generation that you have in your facility. The Green Switch program is next. This program, again, has no long-term agreement. You're buying the renewable attributes, the RECs, under this program. So this is just another way to reduce your carbon footprint. This is typically for smaller businesses that just want to be a part of the solution, or even residential. This program's been around for a long time. Green Flex is for our larger renewable purchasing industries. It requires a minimum of 2,000 RECs to be purchased. It is a 1-year contract. We've got a lot of our large industries that meet their carbon goals by buying RECs under this program. But this has been a very popular program. The cost is $2.50 per REC, and this program currently is fully subscribed. So basically, there's a waiting list for customers, and we've got to get some more renewable generation on our system before we can add any more customers under the Green Flex program. The Green Invest program had a lot of interest in this program. This is for utility scale projects, companies like Yahoo and Amazon that want to put new generation or want to not buy RECs, but basically build their own generation. They work in cooperation with TVA on this program. This typically requires a long-term agreement, like a 20-year agreement. But we do work with our customers on that. So hold on just a second. I apologize. The joys of working from home. Sorry about that. So that's our Green Invest program. To start a Green Invest program, you would want to reach out to your local power company. They'd be getting in touch with us, and we would work with you to do some of that paperwork. It is non-binding, but it is required before you start down that path. I believe that is my last slide. Oh, yes, let me, and I believe my coworker, Jared Chapman, is on the line as well. I wanted to also, in addition to hopefully covering all of our renewable programs, I wanted to remind everyone of what's been said many times before. TVA can work with you through your local power company to get applications for energy efficiency projects. That's a very green thing to do, and it's something that we are available to assist with. And I wanted to just quickly let you know that LED lighting upgrades are probably the most common efficiency projects that we see. They have pretty quick paybacks. The lighting is a better lighting with lower maintenance cost, and they are eligible for the REAP program incentives. Heating and cooling, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning projects are our next common savings project that we can provide some estimates for. Work through your local power company to give you some feedback on those projects. As far as lighting upgrades, there are incentives available through TVA for LED lighting projects. If you go to energyright.com and click on business and industry, you'll find those. And when you get a copy of these slides, here at the bottom, you'll see the link for the incentives. And you'll also find a link for our preferred partners network. That's our contractors that can come into your facility at no cost to give you an idea of what these upgrades are going to cost. A lot of those upgrades include thermostats or some sort of energy management system for your facility. Don't know how many people on this call would be in the market to purchase forklifts, but we do have a $2,000 per forklift incentive if you want to replace some propane forklifts for electric. And there's also a couple of different options for indoor agriculture. TVA wants to support that initiative as well. So again, the links for those are at energyright.com for our incentives and our preferred partners network. So I went through that pretty quickly, and again, I apologize for my dogs being a little loud there. Do we have any questions at this point?
Any questions? That was really interesting stuff. Well, if not, if people think of anything for Mr. Irwin, you can always put it in the chat or contact him or directly or us later on.
It looks like I see something here. It
Oh,
says
good.
AEC has directions they can sell. Yes, we do have a couple of our local power companies that have installed what I call community solar. And I think one of our presenters even talked about using REAP to fund community solar projects. So Appalachian Electric Cooperative up in Jefferson City, the folks up in Johnson City, and a couple of others of our local power companies have installed fairly good size community solar projects so that folks in their service area can buy some of their power through those community solar installations. So yeah, that is true. We're glad to support that as well. So thank you for that question.
This is being recorded. Will there be a way to get all of the links on the previous presentation plus links to the different programs
We're gonna send these out as PowerPoints. And at least mine will be a live PowerPoint, which if you have PowerPoint, you can click on the link in PowerPoint itself.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So yeah, I think if not, if there's an issue, we'll get you the links. But yeah, the links are pretty useful.
Yeah, hopefully my links will come through, but I went ahead and put energyright.com into the chat so that folks can have that to look into. But hopefully the links on my PowerPoint will be clickable for you as well.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll send that out to everybody. Any more questions or comments? Well, if not, we were slated for a break, but a 5-minute break, but we have 2 presenters left and then our general discussion. Do y'all want to push on through and be done a little early, or do people need another break, official break?
I say let's keep going.
Okay. Well, with that, then our next presenter is Brandon England with Pathway Lending. He's a director of energy efficiency lending with Pathway, and so he's going to provide us with a really useful and interesting lender's perspective.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on the call today. It's always good to partner up with USDA. We've done several projects over the years, and I'll highlight a few of those, but it's such a great program to combine with our financing, and it just works really well. So glad to join in on this call. I think can everybody see the screen? I think I've got it set up.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to start off with who we are, because Pathway Lending, it's not everyone knows who we are. So we are a nonprofit, mission-based financial institution. We're what's called a community development financial institution. So they really exist to serve underserved markets. So most of what we've been doing through the years is on the business lending side. And this is our mission. So it's provide lending solution educational services that support the development, growth, and preservation of underserved small businesses, affordable housing, and sustainable communities. So we were founded in 1999. And so for the most of those years, we were primarily based in providing small businesses throughout the state that are underserved, whether that's in low income areas or they're minority owned businesses or women owned businesses, to help them with financial services, because they just don't get served as well by the large financial institution. And that's the reason CDFIs exist. And over the years, we've really expanded that core business into providing educational services. And so we have a women's business center, we have a veterans business center. We also do a lot of technical assistance for our loan clients, but we've also expanded into affordable housing, where we offer primary mortgages on LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit projects, but also just more of the naturally occurring affordable housing. And we've also do the energy efficiency loan program, which is really why I'm here and what I've worked on. So this slide's a little bit about the different clients we've served, which I spoke about. But our efficiency loan program, and what happened was all the way back in 2009. So TVA and the state were both thinking about starting financing programs to support energy efficiency. And the reason for that is because what was happening with your standard financial institutions, if you just go to a bank, a lot of times they're not going to be willing to finance a lighting project unless you've got other relationships with them, because they can't find collateral for that project. And so at least that was the case at the time. There's a few more options out now, but that was really the reason for starting the program, and also to provide some low-cost financing for these types of projects. So over the course of the program, I think in the bottom left corner, you can see that we financed actually over 320 projects over the course of the 11 years of the program, about a little over $60 million worth of loans. So it's been very successful. I've talked about a little bit why. A lot of times traditional financing sources, they don't understand the projects, but then they also don't want to provide loans for a project where they don't have collateral to take back if they don't get paid. So that's an important thing. So most of the loans that we've done in this program have not had firm collateral to take back. They've been unsecured loans. So the general markets that we serve, really any location, it has to be in Tennessee because of the state funds involved in the program, but there's a lot of different types of facilities. It can't be single family, it can't be a state government facility, but we've done industrial, commercial, nonprofits, a lot of private schools. We've done, we can even do local governments, even though with a capital outlay note, even though no one's applied for that in the program. Some of the key markets, the way I usually describe it is the key markets for us is if you've got a locally owned or locally controlled organization, they're the ones that more apt to seek our financing. So a lot of times that's hotels, that's auto dealerships, we've done a lot of loans to YMCAs, a lot of churches, private schools have been a big market for us. But really, anytime it's locally owned and controlled, they're the ones that are more apt to gravitate to our program. Different types of projects we do. In general, anything that shows significant reduction in utility use. So a lot of the projects that all the projects that have been listed as far as energy efficiency and renewable energy in the presentations before this qualify. But if you can come up with just about anything and show, we've even had recently, there was a former clients of ours that came and was showing us how their industrial equipment, their actual production equipment, was going to reduce in usage, and we'd be glad to do that. So the common projects we see, lighting, of course, has been the biggest energy efficiency project that we've seen over the years. It's been about 50% of our projects, by the number of projects and by dollar, has been in the lighting space. The renewable energy, of course, has been solar. We've seen kind of a shift lately where HVAC has been more commonly used in our program than even lighting. So, and those dollar amounts are going up significantly because of just inflation, and the cost of that equipment right now is really driving up HVAC costs. So we're seeing a lot more people apply for loans to cover HVAC. But any kind of envelope improvements that's going to improve your energy use, and some of the things like air compressors in the industrial space can have really great paybacks. So we see that in the industrial. The actual terms of the loan. So our loan amounts range from $20,000 to $5 million. Where you can see they're below market rates. We offer really two sets of terms. Either you can get a 2% loan for 5 years or a 5% loan for 10 years. And that really incentivizes people to use those short terms. And even if the project doesn't cash flow with that 2% for 5 years, people gravitate to it and they want to use that because they get that cheaper interest rate. So we see a lot of, even on things like the HVAC, where if you looked at the energy payback of that project, maybe 15 years, they still want to get that 2% rate. So they use that 2% for 5 year. It's maybe 10% of our projects go with that 5% rate for 10 years. But the good thing about that is because we do have a cap on the amount of funds in this program, so it keeps it revolving. And so we've never used up all of our funds in this program, because that 2% for 5 years really comes back quickly to be revolved in the loan program. We set these things up with the loans up with an interest-only draw period. So typically that's 3 or 4 months to allow the project to be installed, so you can start saving on the energy before you have to pay the principal on the loan. So that works really great, especially if you have a short payback project where you have those savings actually paying that principal and interest. We cover 100% of the financing cost. So the way, if thinking about in this presentation, thinking about the USDA grant, so if you had say, just to use round numbers, $100,000 project, we would fund you the $100,000 cost of the project. And as that USDA grant came back in, you could use that to pay down the principal if you want. But we cover the full cost of that project, including labor, not just equipment, the whole cost of the project. So if you think about what are the program benefits, so if you're a vendor out there and thinking about promoting our product, our loan product, to get your projects going, you can get a lot of projects done sooner. So rather than waiting for budgets of the company to come around, you may propose this cheap financing and get that thing done quickly. To the business or organization, of course, it's below market rates. You can get more projects done today rather than waiting for budgets to come around. And then you can keep that working capital in your business where it needs to be to support the business, rather than using that capital to support these energy efficiency, these capital upgrades. So that's a great reason to get financing at a cheap rate to support these projects. To go into a few, I know we've seen a lot of different success stories, different examples of how things were used, but I'll go through a few of these and I won't get too much into the detail, but this was probably about 6 years ago. This company's already paid back, but this food center, this grocery store, it was out in East Tennessee. And what's fun about this story is they were able to use the TVA incentive for energy efficiency projects. They used the USDA grant. When you added those together, the payback on this project after the grant and the incentive was about 4 months. So when I said, and we were giving him a loan for 2%, and when I sat down to close with the owner of this facility, he looked at me and said, "This is the best business decision I have ever made." So that was really fun to be able to close that loan with him. Another thing that's fun about about these grocery stores is years ago I heard a stat about energy efficiency in these. So in the kind of the frozen food areas. So if you were in these cases and you were replacing these with LED lights, I heard the stat that ice cream sales went up by 12% by doing replacing the case lighting with LEDs. And so I started asking grocery store owners when we did when we did the financing and went back to talk to them about their project, if they noticed anything like this. And pretty much every time they would smile and say, "Yes, we've seen all of our frozen food sales go up after doing this lighting." There's just something about being lit up with LEDs that I guess people are more apt to buy the product. So that's fun to think about when you're trying to sell energy efficiency to people, that there's kind of extraneous benefits to just energy efficiency savings. This was a nonprofit, so they weren't able to apply for a USDA grant, but this was another lighting project throughout a large facility. But the reason I like to talk about this one is another one that there's other benefits involved. So asking how this went with this workforce center, and they have some different call centers, and so they noticed that the employee production in this call center went up tremendously by putting in the new lighting. So whether they felt like they were being watched more or they could see their screens better, I don't know what the cause of that was, but they reported that. And if you think about how big of a benefit that is, I did that little calculation at the bottom of this, that 200 employees at $12 an hour, 15. So if they had a 1% increase, that's $36,000. So and it would have had to have been more than that for them to notice. So there's a lot of benefits to these projects that are outside of just energy savings that I like to talk about, because it's good to think about. And it may not go into an ROI calculation very well, but there is a return that's outside of just energy savings. This is a rural manufacturer. It's in Rockwood, Tennessee. I don't think that they ever used a USDA grant for this project. This was years ago when they did this, but they came back to us 3 times. So that first project they did was lighting, then they came back and did a compressor, and came back and did an HVAC, and they're talking about doing another project with us. So there's been a lot of repeat clients in our program. So it really is a great resource to get these projects, get these energy efficiency projects done. This is a hotel. I mentioned that hotels have been a common user of the program. This is an old slide as well. The Holiday Inn, I think it's been rebranded as a Marriott downtown, but they again, this was a repeat client with us. They came in and did boilers. They did some other projects, some lighting, exterior lighting, and then came back a second time to do more energy efficiency with controls and different interior lighting as well. So another story of how our program can be used. This is a more recent project. I think this was done in 2019. And so an auto dealership in Gallatin, and they had other locations as well, but this is just their Gallatin, Tennessee location. They used the USDA grant to fund a part of their project. And this was one of the examples of how their vendor was not familiar with the USDA grant. I actually mentioned to them, knowing it was within the USDA area that they could get. And so they applied completely on their own. They did not have a grant writer. They did not have a vendor working with them to do this. They went and got the audit done by TVA and did the entire application by themselves. So if you're a business out there thinking, can we do this on our own? This company did do that. I don't think and so it is possible. You don't have to have those, but I know it's probably a much easier process if you do have an experienced grant writer involved in the project. So they were able to use the USDA grant or our financing to put lighting throughout their facility. This is a more recent. I think Harvey was on the call. I don't know if he still is, but their company, Solar Alliance, worked with the Lick Skillet Farm to put in a solar project and do some other work on the HVAC side. And they used a USDA grant in order to help finance this project. So they used our financing in the USDA grant to put this solar on this farm, which I think is considered in the criteria to be a small business. But it was a successful user of both of our programs. And so that's all that I had to share. So here's my contact information, and I'd be glad to work with anyone, answer any questions about our program and how we can work alongside of the USDA.
I think that was just an amazing presentation, and y'all are doing really good, work and just providing a lot of benefits to the broader community.
Well, thank you, and we hope to do more. I know there's talk of CPACE in the state, and I was on a call about that tomorrow. So there's a lot of things coming with energy efficiency financing that's going to help even more projects get done in the state in coming years.
Great. Any questions or comments? If not, our next presenter is Ted Wampler. He's with Wampler Sausage, and he's going to talk about the REAP program as a recipient of REAP funding. And Ted, you should be able to share your screen. So.
Okay, well, y'all are getting a shot there you probably didn't intend to see. So let me start this. Start the slideshow here. That did it. Okay, a little better.
Yep.
Let's see here. I think I can. Okay, good. I can move that. So, hi everybody. Good afternoon. I guess one of the costs of having me involved in anything is you got to have a little bit of a commercial. I'm always selling sausage. And so, this is a picture of the farm, and, it's still located at this site. This is the farm Grandpa bought in 1935. And for 2 years, he cleaned the farm by hand and by horse, and got the swamp bottom here cleaned out. And so this is what it looked like back in 1937. The little building on the right there is the original meat plant, and we still have that building here on site today. Anyway, we do still make sausage the way that Dad came up with years ago, but how we do it from a power standpoint is certainly different from what Dad did. Matter of fact, we used to joke that when the company started, we were energy independent, no doubt, because there was none. But anyway, so we're on our way back to energy independence, hopefully. And a whole lot of what got us started down the road that we're on is USDA and the folks there, you know, with the REAP program. It really was a direction changer for our company. And so this is a while back, a shot of where we are, and you can see this picture, being old, only shows 2 solar projects. And the first one is on top of the building down here in the lower right. And then that's 2009. And then our 2011 system is over here in the field. But we've done quite a bit of building since this photo. Well, so a couple of things that I'll cover real quick today, is, you know, why did we invest in energy projects? You know, why did we do it? I'm going to cover 4 solar projects and then a couple of other REAP projects for energy that we've done here. I'll share the financials on those things. And so, you know, we get asked a lot, why did we do it? And so, you know, from our standpoint, one of our answers is that, you know, as an agricultural company, we understand how important it is to take care of the environment. And we do have millions of consumers that enjoy our product every week. And we feel like we have a responsibility to those people to make our products in the most sustainable way possible. We owe that to them, their children, their grandchildren, and beyond to do that. And so that's part of the why. USDA and the REAP program is a whole lot of the how. And so, you know, this is one of the things I kind of like to go through with this. You know, it's business and marketing for people that would participate in these programs. You know, in your community, it's the right thing to do. From a marketing standpoint, especially with the generation of consumers coming on today, it's the only thing to do. And then, you know, with help of the USDA, from an economic standpoint, it's the possible thing to do. And that's kind of the numbers I'll be sharing here. Our original project back in 2009 went on top of the new sausage kitchen. It was 6 arrays. I probably don't need to spend a lot of time on this stuff, but back in those days, we got with Harvey Abulata, and Harvey was a genius, I guess, at getting into the programs and finding the grants. And I would have to say he still is. So this was the cost of that 30,000 watts back in 2009. And we tapped into a Tennessee Clean Energy Technology grant, the USDA REAP grant, and a TVA startup grant. And so you can see the numbers there that those were. So those grants came in as taxable income. And net after those grants, we were out of pocket to 78,000. But several things happened. You know, we got a 30% investment tax credit on the cost of the spend. So when you look at the original investment, I think I've got half of that off. I don't think we got that in cash. And so anyway, the depreciation base, 170,000 right there. First year at that time, we got a bonus depreciation. I know we did the 85,000. First year regular depreciation, 4,000. And so the total depreciation or write-off on that year one was, you know, right at $90,000. When you look at that project this way, the 201 cost, the total amount of grants, the tax credit, then you've got a net cash investment of only 17,837. That system was projected to bring in an estimated income of 7,500 a year. That's because not only were we saving the electric, but we were also getting 12 cents over at that time from our friends at TVA. And so with that net cash investment and that kind of income, in about 2 years and 2 months, you know, we were paid back financially on that system. So that was and our first delve into it. Another opportunity came along in the end of 2010 and right on into 11. And this was our second solar project. We did get with Harvey again, and this one worked out really well for us. A 500,000 kW system up on the field. Here's another shot of it. And the financials and everything, the way this one worked out was really, really good. The contract that we had with the installer here in Tennessee, where you can see was this 2.346 million. We spent additionally on the farm this 107 for a total spend of 2.454 million. That's what we paid out to get the system installed, the land cleared, the fences up, all the things that we had to do for that system. Well, in 2011, you could get your investment tax credit. The part of this program that qualified, 30% of it was $704,000. We got that as a 1603 cash grant. So that money passed through us straight to the installer. But of course, it brought down the cost of the project. The really great thing was when we got with the Tennessee USDA REAP folks. And so through the REAP grant, we got, I understand it was the largest REAP grant in the state's history, and possibly is still the largest one that's ever been awarded. I can't say for sure on that, but I know up to date that was the largest grant ever awarded. We got with the grant writer, and this project was a Tennessee project. All of the funds stayed in the state. We spec'd out Tennessee installer, Tennessee components, Tennessee built panels. They were built at Sharp in Memphis, Tennessee, and all the components, everything was Tennessee. And so the grant explained what it did to the Tennessee economy, to roll that money over and over right here within the state. And so that helped in that award of the 250,000. So all in all, we brought in $954,000 of taxable income on that project. So that left us a net out-of-pocket cost of 1.5 million. The cash down was actually 270,000. When you take that 107,000 off that we probably needed to spend on the farm anyway, we're down into the $165,000 range out of pocket. It let us have a $1.23 million note amount to be financed. And so the payment on that project was $12,313.39 a month, and it brings in roughly 150,000 or better per year. And so from day one, it cash flowed itself. So that was really, really great. To be sustainable, a project needs to be sustainable in every way, not just for the environment, but also financially and for business sustainable. So this thing cash flowed itself in 12-month bites from day one. When you look back at that project, we did get that 704,000 in the 1603 cash grant. Well, if you look at the project, the original contract was 2.346 million. The government, for tax purposes, has you take 1/2 of a 1603 cash grant off of your basis. So we took 352,000 off of the part of the project that qualified, leaving us with this $1.994 million asset. The great thing was that we got to write off that entire asset off of our tax depreciation that in every bit that entire year. And so in 2011, we wrote off that 1.994. Now that more than offset, of course, the 954,000 consisting of the taxable grant and the REAP grant that came in. And so we wound up, of course, having a great program there when you can write off the entire project and you're basically on that project about 165,000 out of pocket. And so if you look at our first two projects, total grant income, tax incentives, things like that in that year, that's the money in was 1,137,000. Here is the ceremony. Of course, there's my dad, mom, Will Dotson, Jimmy Duncan, Bobby Good, and then me. And of course, that check is the two amounts together, the loan guarantee of the 1.23 million, and then the $250,000 REAP grant. And so a great day, great program. REAP really did some good things for us that day and on that project. So as a follow-up, our third solar project was a partnership with Family Brands International, which is Cades Cove Barbecue and Elm Hill Hot Dogs. But we partnered with the Knoxville Zoo and brought Harvey Abulata in again. And we put a 50,000 watt system on top of the elephant preserve at the Knoxville Zoo. This came after dealing with the folks at USDA and the REAP program. We did not get anything with this project because the zoo is a nonprofit, but it's certainly the REAP program led us to do this project. One of the next things we did, and this was with my son working with Chuck Morris and the folks at USDA again, but we had a large part of the plant here that was old style lighting. And of course, we're putting out a lot of heat in our freezers and coolers, our refrigerated areas rather. And so when they looked at what this would do, the project cost was, $30,000. 25% of that was this 7,508. And so we did apply for and get a REAP grant for 25% of that project. So the net cost was 22,509. The annual savings calculated in kilowatt hours, though, is really something else there. You can see that just in KW hours, it's 36,000 a year in utility savings. And that really doesn't count the heat that we took out of the room by switching to the LEDs. And of course, the plant looks great with the LED lights on. I mean, if we were selling ice cream, like I heard just a second ago, like at Wade's Supercenter up there, we'd be selling more ice cream because the LED lighting has really helped. And so really a great program. This is the fourth solar project that we did. This is on top of the newest sow barns that connect to the actual harvest floor. And so this is a 100,000 kW system that once again, my son worked on this one with Harvey. And this has turned out to be a great project. It was installed at $1.45 a watt. I think way back, we were probably about $7 a watt. And that's when there were lots of incentives that it really took to get the solar thing going. But now through competition and efficiencies and the program going, now at this one, we were down to $1.45 a watt. We did apply for and receive another REAP grant, this time $20,000. In that project, we got a federal tax credit of this 43,614. I do know that year one depreciation was 38,459. We had already spent on plant equipment, on growth, a lot of other things, so we didn't get to write it all off in 18. We already took that on plant equipment, but that was year one depreciation. So we're figuring, that after we got the tax credit and the grant, about 80,000 in it, and that system should return at least 10,000 a year. It is on our side of the meter. We're not collecting anything for that, but we are reducing energy on our side of the meter. And that's of course during peak time. And so when you really look at it, the savings are greater than that, because if we ever get into electric being charged based on the time of day that you're in, we're saving during the most expensive time, with this solar project. The next thing that we're doing, this was set up, you can see, this is our shop blast. This is Trey working with USDA again. And we had a very inefficient old shop blast. It's connected to our shop, is why we call it that. But we had already done all kinds of insulation to this on our own, but then got looking at the units. And so this was an upgrade of the actual refrigeration units. I took this right out of our journal because of COVID and all the problems happening in the supply chain right now. This system just got finished. And so I think we owe about $5,000 more to the installer. So this will wind up being $102,000 roughly. We do have a USDA grant that we've applied for there that's open, and now that project is finished. And so hopefully we'll be able to close out on that, receive that grant. It'll lower the cost of that building down to about $81,000, $82,000. But here's the other thing that this grant allowed us to do. If you look at the E-gauge, we have E-gauges on a lot of things going on around here. The shop blast before is on the left. And then of course, where it goes down to almost nothing is during when the week, 7-8 days that the system was taken down and put back together with the new, more efficient energy using units. And actually right now, our blast freezers are much, much colder than they were before, using a lot less energy. And so you can see, since we turned it on this past couple of days, how much better that looks. And so I have no clue what the savings is going to be on that, but I think Chuck and Trey figured it up. But we're going to gain back that investment in that low temp blast system pretty darn quick. And so, I know that there's been people on here and doing the presentation who actually, handle these things, but Wampler Sausage Company has been a recipient of the various programs. And, we are so thankful, for everything that the USDA REAP folks have done for us. We highly recommend the program. If there's anybody here, listening who's on the fence, we just can't say enough about how good this program can work for you. And the team, the people are all wonderful to work with, and very successful program. And, if there's any questions or anything, that I need to go back over, I can, but it's been really good. One thing I can share, I just looked it up, but if you look at our green power income alone, going back to 2011 forward for 10 years, our green power income over those 10 years has been 2.19 million. And that would consist of the energy credit, the energy reduction and the checks from TVA on 3 solar projects, the first 3. And it would also consist of recycling income. But over those 10 years, it's been $2.19 million in green power income. And so, the benefits from doing these kind of projects, saving the planet is good, smart business. And working with USDA and the REAP program and the BNI loan guarantees, the programs that they've got are definitely the way to go. So that's kind of it for me. I mean, I could go into how it led us into hydrogen energy and put everybody to sleep, but anyway, it's been a great thing for us, and just can't say enough good stuff about it.
Wow, what advertisement for the program.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Thanks, Ted.
Yes, sir. Yeah, if anybody's got a question for me, I'll be glad to answer anything I can. I see Harvey Abulata is on the meeting. He can give me $20 later. Okay.
We
Well,
do
thank
have,
you, everybody.
we
Yeah,
do have
thanks.
people that have thanked you in the chat for, it's a really
Oh.
great insight to its success story.
Oh, well,
And
good. Yeah,
Walter
somehow I'm not.
Battle said he's definitely going to order some sausage from you.
Oh, good. Good deal. I've got pictures all over the plant, as y'all can see. I'll close those things down.
Okay.
And I think I can stop share. There you go. All
Yeah.
right. Good.
Okay, now we have an open session that, that you can ask us questions of any of the presenters, or if y'all want to have any discussion about, the benefits of this program, or, your decision to move forward. Now's the time to get the input of everybody that's presented, or just any comments in general that people would like to make, either unmuting themselves or in the chat. I noticed that we do have people that have put up in the chat information that, the private vendors that can help you with installing projects and writing grants as well. So those should be available for everybody.
Hey, I just wanted to, this is Tom Irwin. I was going to let other folks jump in, but Ted, I know also that the folks from Tennessee Tech were of some help to you. That's a little outside the scope of our discussion today, but did they help you some with some of the energy savings projects?
Absolutely. I forgot all about that. I'm glad you brought it up. They actually worked with Trey. He is a mechanical engineer, and the tech engineering folks came over, and it was just awesome. The study they did was so in depth, and it was, a bunch of kids. I was really impressed when they got me and went over their findings, and I had no idea how much an air leak cost. But the things that they did and recommended, we're pursuing those things. If you can get that done, my son has the contact information. Anybody can contact me and get it. But the Tennessee Tech thing was really worth it. Really worth it.
That's very useful information. Thank you. It sounds like that was a student-based project then, Ted.
It was. There was one professor and then a bunch of students, and they really, really got involved. If Trey were over here in the office with me, he could go through, a lot more of the details of that, because he's the one actually following up on it.
Mm-hmm.
But we've made several changes that those students recommended. I know that someone touched a second ago on the grant writing thing. Just like Trey is handling the engineering recommendations from Tech, getting with a grant writer, and a turnkey installer, I highly recommend, because that let me concentrate on, my core business, which is, it's glorious. It's kind of glamorous and stuff, it's killing hogs for a living, but that let me do that while they did their thing. And so getting with a turnkey installer and a grant writer or an all-in-one like Harvey is, you know, I highly recommend that. It lets you concentrate on what you do best yourself. And that, you know, and that's probably why I don't know as much about the tech thing, but it was, again, it was super impressive. And Trey is following up on the recommendations.
Anybody else have anything they want to add, either by chat or verbally? Any of the presenters? Well, if not, I guess we're done with this workshop. We are going to be mailing these PowerPoints out to all of y'all, and then we also got most of the presentations recorded as well. The very first of a part of Mr. Morris's didn't. I thought I had record button on and I didn't, so I'm the one to blame for that. But we captured virtually everything as a recording, and of course we'll try to get that out to y'all as well. So you should have these PowerPoints available to you with links that you can click on, and hopefully this will be useful information to y'all and other people that you know, and it'll lead to more applications coming from the state of Tennessee, and more good work, more of the good work that's been going on that we've seen with people like Wampler's Sausage and others, and Brandon England's lending organization.
Yeah, thank you. Brendan got me thinking about my HVAC systems really quick.
Good. Well, once again, thank everybody and have a good day and a good rest of this week. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Welcome.